Now, just move forward to the understanding active and passive voice. So, what is active voice? See, in active voice, the subject of the sentence performs the action described by the verb. The subject is the doer or the actor, and the verb indicates the action they take. For example, the dog bites the man. In this, subject is dog because the dog is performing the action and object is man. Man is receiving the action. So, what are the characteristics of active voice and passive voice? So, now what is the characteristics of active voice? The subject is the doer of the action, the verb in its base form, for example, bites, rides, run, etc. The object received the action. While in passive voice, the subject of the sentence receives the action described by the verb. The subject is the recipient of the action, and the verb indicates the action that is being done to them. Example, the man was bitten by the dog. So, subject here, man, because man is receiving the action. Verb is was bitten because action being done to the subject. And the agent is dog because dog is performing the action but not the subject. So this is the example of the passive voice. So what are the characteristics of the passive voice? The subject is the recipient of the action. The verb in its the passive form, for example, bitten, was bitten, was written, was eaten. So the agent is the doer of the action, is often introduced by. It is in inverted commas by or other prepositions. So there are some key differences of active and passive voice. In active voices, subject performs the action because in upper statement or examples, the dog bites men. So this is the active voice. And in passive voices, subject received the action, which is man was bitten by the dog. So active voices emphasizes the doer, while passive voice emphasizes the action or its recipients. So when you use each of them, how you just notified it what is the importance of the active and passive voice. So most everyday conversation and writing in active voice, when the doer of the action is important or relevant. While in passive voice, when the doer is unknown or important or obvious. So in scientific and technical or academic writing to emphasizes the action. So in news headlines to emphasize the event. So converting between active and passive voice. So active to passive, change the verb to its passive form. Move the object to the subject position. Introduce the agent with by or other prepositions is optional. So while converting into passive into to active, you have to change the verb to its base form. Move the subject to the object preposition or positions. Remove the agent and by or other prepositions. So understanding active and passive voice can help you communicate more effectively, vary your sentences structure, and enhance your writing and speaking skills. So, active and passive voice are two different ways of constructing sentences in English. So, in active voice, the subject performs the action described by the verb. For example, the dog bites the man. The subject is dog, and who performs the action, which is bites. So in passive voice, the subject received the action, which is described by the verb. For example, the man was bitten by the dog. So the subject man received the action was bitten. So to convert active voice to passive voice, to change the verb to its passive form, for example, bites becomes was bitten. Move the object of the active sentence to the subject position in the passive sentences. Move the subject of the active sentence to the position of the agent in the passive sentence, precede by. So when to use passive voice? When to use passive voice? When the doer of the action is unknown or unimportant. For example, the play was written in 1960. So the writer is unknown or unimportant. The writer is not important. But what they written and in 1916, that important. So next is when the focus is on the action rather than the doer. For example, the new policy has been implemented. So here the focus is on the policy, not on the implement. Who implemented, I don't know. The policy, what is the policy, that is important. So when the subject is acted upon by an unknown or unspecified entity. For example, the package was delivered yesterday. So the deliverer is unknown or unspecified. Remember, both active and passive voice have their own uses and purposes. Understanding both can help you communicate more effectively in English communication language. So, how you transforming voice? See, transforming voice refer to the process of changing a sentence from one voice to another, either from active to passive or passive to active. So now I'm going to start about active to passive. Identify the subject, verb, and objective. Change the verb to its passive form. For example, bites become was bitten. Move the object to the subject position. Introduce the agent with by or other position. So example, active is the dog bites the man. The passive, the man was bitten by the dog. In passive to active, identify the subject, verb, and agent. Change the verb to its base form. For example, was bitten becomes bit bites. So move the subject to the object opposition. Remove the agent by or other prepositions. For example, in passive, the man was bitten by the dog. But in active, the dog bites the man. See, transforming voice can help vary sentences structure for better writing and speaking. It also emphasizes different parts of the sentence, which is doer or the action. Make sentences more concise and formal. Improve clarity and readability. Remember, transforming voice is a valuable tool to enhance your communication skills, but it's essential to use appropriately and not overuse passive voice, as it can sometimes make the writing less engaging or less clear. What is active voice? Active voice is a grammatical construction in which the subject of a sentence performs the action described by the verb. In other words, the subject is the doer or the actor, and the verb indicates the action they take. So here I'm just discussing about the characteristics of active voice, which is the subject performs the action. The verb ends in base form, for example, bites, writes, runs, describes. The object receives the actions. The subject is the focus on the sentence. So example of the active voice is, see, the writer writes the book. So the writer is the subject and performing the action. The chiefs cook the meal. The chef cooks the meal. The chef is the subject performing the action. Active voice is the often preferred in the writing and the speaking because it makes sentences clearer and more direct. It also emphasizes the doer of the action. It's create more engaging and dynamic writing. However, there are situations where passive voice is more appropriate, such as when the doer of the action is unknown or unimportant. So, when the focus is on the action rather than the doer. So, what is the definition of active voice? Active voice is a grammatical construction in which the subject performs by the actions which describe the verbs. The action, the subject is the doer or the actor. The object receives the actions, and the verb is the actions beings of the sentence is the focus of the sentence. So in active voice, the subject is the one that does the actions, performs the task, carries out the activity, execute the verb. Active voice is often used to emphasize the doer of the action, creates clear and direct sentences, make the writing more dynamic and engaging. It is a commonly used in most form of writing, including fictions, non-fiction, academics, and professional writings. So, what are the components of the active voice? The components of active voice are subject, the noun or pronoun that performs the action, verb, the action word that indicates what the subject is doing, object, the noun or pronoun that receives the action. What is agent? The entity that performs the action. It is the same as the subject. In active voice, the subject, which means agent, performs the action which described by the verbs and the object received the action. For example, see, the dog, which is subject or agent, bites means verb, the man is object. So here, the dog is the subject and agent, which means bites. Bite is the verb, and the man is the object. So these components work together to create a clear and direct sentence in active voice, where the focus is on the doer of the action, which is the subject. So here are some different examples of active voices. For example, the cat chases the mouse. So here, the cat is the subject. It is a performing the action of chasing. The teacher grades the paper. So the teacher is the subject performance the action of grading. The chef cooks the dinner. So here the chef is subject performance the action of cooking. The athlete runs the marathon. So the athlete is the subject performance the action of running. The artist paints the landscape. So the here is the artist is the subject performance of the action, which is painting. The musician plays the guitar. So musician is the subject performance of the action, and the playing is the action, which is playing guitar. So the writer writes the novel. What is this? The writer is the subject performance, the action of writing. The scientist conducts the experiments. The scientist is the subject performing and the action of conducting. The farmer grows the crops. Here, the farmer is the subject performance, the action of crops or growing crops. The engineer designs the bridge. So here, the engineer is the subject performance, the action of designing. So in each of these examples, the subject is performance, the actions which is described by the verb, making them example of active voices. So now move forward to definition. The definition of active voice is a sentence structure in which the subject performs the action. See what I told you earlier. When, for example, the farmer grows the crops. So the farmer is the subject performance, the action of growing. So here, what is active voice? Active voice is a sentence structure in which the subject is performing some actions. The subject is a doer, of the action, and the structure of the active sentence is typically subject, verb, or adjectives. So this is the definition of active voice. Now go forward to the examples. So here is some example. See, first example is she wrote a song. So this sentence is an example of active voice because it is written in the form of direct and concise message. So where the subject she is performance actions wrote a song. So yes, the sentence she wrote a song is indeed an example of active voice. Here's such a breakdown of why. So she is the subject of the sentence and she is performing the action described by the verb. Here, wrote is the verb and it is in the base form, which indicating that the subject is performing the action. A song is the object, receive the action of the verb. So in active voice, the subject she is the doer or performance of the action. Wrote and the object a song receive the action. This sentence follows the typical active voice structure. For example, subject she plus verb here is wrote plus object is song. So by using active voice, the sentence is direct, clear and concise, making it easy to understand who is performing the action, she, and what action is being performed. That is writing a song. So this example is known these things. Second example, the cat chased the mouse. So this sentence is the example of an active voice because it is written in the form of a direct and concise message where the subject is the cat is performing, the action is chase the mouse. So the sentence the cat chased the mouse is a perfect example of active voice. Why? The cat is the subject and it's performing the action described by the verb. Chased is the verb and it is in the base form which indicating that the subject is performing the action. The mouse is the object receiving the action of the verb. In active voice, the subject, the cat, is the doer or performance of the action, which is chased, and the object is the mouse, which received the action. So this sentence follow the typical active voice structure. So subject plus verb plus object. Here subject is the cat, verb is chased, and object is mouse. So by using active voice, the sentence is direct, clear, and concise. It's making it easy to understand who is performing the action, and what is the object is. Now go further. He sang a song. So this sentence is an example of active voice because it is written in the concise and format of direct and concise manner. So where is the object? Who is performing the what is this performance of the subject? What is the action of this in this line? So the subject is he is performing the action, which is sang a song. The sentence is he sang a song is a classical example of active voice. Here, why? He is the subject and he is performing the action described by the verb. So here's the verb is sang. Sang is the verb and it's in the base form which indicating that the subject is performing the action. A song is the object receiving the action of the verb. An active voice, the subject is he, is the doer or the performance of the action, which is sang. And the object is a song, which is received the action. This sentence follows the typical active voice structure. So here is subject plus verb plus object, which is subject is he, verb is sang, and object is a song. So by using active voice, the sentence is direct and clear and concise, making it easy to understand who is performing the action, he, and what action is being performed, means singing a song. So these are the examples of active voice. Now go further. What is what is passive voice? What is passive voice? So passive voice is also a grammatical constructions in which the subject of a sentence receives the action described by the verb rather than performing it. In other words, the subject is acted upon by the verb rather than acting itself. So here are some characteristics of passive voice, which we'll discuss it here. The subject received the action. So the verb in its passive form, example, was sung or is written or will be delivered. So the agent as the doer of the action is often introduced by or other preposition. So the focus is on the action rather than the doer. Here are some examples of passive voice. For example, the song sung by him. So the song was received by the action which is being sung. The book is written by the author. The books receive the action of being written. The package will be delivered by the courier. The package received the action of being delivered. So passive voice can be useful in certain situations, such as when doer of the action is unknown or unimportant, when the focus is on the action rather than the doer. In scientific, technical, or academic writing to emphasize the action. However, it's important to use passive voice judiciously, as excessive use can lead to unclear of or wordy writings. Describe passive voice. So describe the passive voice is a grammatical constructions in which the subject receives the action described by the verb. The verb is in its passive form, for example, was, is, will be, plus past participle. The agent means the doer of the action is often introduced by or other prepositions. The focus is on the action which is rather than the doer. So in passive voice, the subject is acted upon the verb. Rather than performing the action, the passive voice constructions emphasizes the action recipients other than the performer. Example, the ball was thrown by John. The ball is the subject receiving the action. Was thrown is the passive verb form. By John is introduced the agent doer of the action. So passive voice can change the sentence emphasis and tone, making it useful in a specific context, but it is essential to use it appropriately to maintain clear and effective communication. What is components of passive? So here are the components of the passive voice in having more details, which is subject, the noun or the pronoun that receives the action which described by the verb. In passive voice, the subject is acted upon by the verb rather than performing the action. For example, the ball was thrown by the verb, John. So here, passive verb passive verb, the verb in its passive form, which consists of auxiliary verbs. So be, been, and being, which indicates the passive voice and agrees with the subject in number and person. What is past participle? Past participle example, thrown, written, eaten, which indicates the complete action and agrees with the subject in number and gender. For example, was thrown, and the ball was thrown by the John. So here the agent is the noun or pronoun that performs the action. described by the verb. In passive voice, the agent is introduced by the prepositions such as by, with, or from. So example, John, in the ball was thrown by John. Object is the noun or pronoun that receive the action if different from the subject. For example, the window. In the ball was thrown at the window by John. In passive voice, the focus is on the actions, recipients, the subject, rather than the performer, the agent. The passive verb form and the preposition used to introduce agents are essential components of passive voice. Here are some more examples which I just want to discuss with you all. The play is being written by the author. So the subject is play, passive verb is being written, and agent is author. The package was delivered by the courier. Here, subject is package, passive verb is was delivered, and agent is courier. Next is the cake is being baked by my sister. So subject here is cake, and passive verb is being baked, and agent here is my sister. So just discussing with your examples of passive voice are, the ball was thrown by John. The ball received the action of being thrown. The play is being written by author. The play received the actions of being written. The package was delivered by courier. The package receives the action of being delivered. The cake is being baked by my sister. So here the cake received the action of being baked. This report was prepared by my team. So the report received the action of being prepared. The new employee was trained by the manager. Here, new employee received the action of being trained. The research paper of reviewed by the expert. So here, the research paper received the action of being reviewed. The concert was organized by the event teams. So the concert received the action of being organized. The artwork was created by the artist. So the artwork received the action of being created. The decision was made by the committee. The decisions is received the action of being made. So in each of these examples, the subject receives the action described by the verb rather than performing the action. The action doer of the action is introduced by the preposition such as by. Note that passive voice can be used in different tenses such as present, past, future. Present passive, if I'm just giving the example of present passive, the play is being written by the author. So this is coming to the present passive. If I given the example of past passive, the package was delivered by the courier. And the future passive is the report will be prepared by the team. So I hope you all are able to understand the examples of illustrate with the passive voice. If you have some query, you can ask it. Thank you.